It's too bad she won't live. But then again, who does?
Welcome to Popped, where you can learn about and relive some of the best that entertainment has to offer. We'll revisit some of our favorite films that helped influence and shape our lives. Now sit back, strap in, and keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. And if you have to, take a shot of whiskey to keep them swooning when you hear their voices. Here are your hosts,
Daniel, Ben, and Tanya.
What actually makes someone a human being versus not.
Right.
And then also the difference between being human and the quality of humanity in a person. And they absolutely did show Roy Batty to be a better human than many that anyone in the world today could think of.
I was going to say, I'm wondering if we had caught him earlier in his lifespan, would he turn out to be as empathetic as he was towards the end? Because I know they had mentioned that as time goes on, they develop more and more emotions. That's why they have that cutoff. Mm-hmm. And so the more sophisticated he became, the more sort of human he became. So, like, what does that look like? Did he develop a consciousness, a soul?
More human than human is our motto.
What would you define that as? What level of respect do you give that versus a human being? It's very interesting.
It's like very interesting.
When does that switch flip?
Yeah, if you think about the ending of the film, when he gives that speech, the Tears and Rain speech, which to date, to me, is probably one of the best death speeches ever a character has ever given on film. And to think that he had altered the original script considerably. The original script, I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that speech is 4 times as long, and it's filled with a bunch of techno jargon. It's totally impassioned. And Rucker looked at it and said, "Hey, do you mind if I change this?" And the original writer was like, "Sure," but in his high voice, because you're tinkering with something that I've written. But the thing is after he heard what Rucker did with it, he was very impressed and said, "Oh, I can't imagine it any other way." And what Rucker did was take out all of the junk and keep in the experiences, those human experiences he had, right? His memories that were so important. And at this point in the film, he's showing or he's expressing his own memories to Deckard, and not the implanted memories they gave him, right? He's talking about attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion, sea beams glittering in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. And that little bit at the very end that he puts in there, all those moments will be lost in time, like tears and rain. He put that in there. That was not in the script.
Nice.
And it's probably one of
God bless him.
Probably one of the most beautiful sentiments. And it honestly, if you're going to talk about Blade Runner, I feel like that moment makes this film.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
it really is it's the capstone on top of it. It just really makes the film. What do you guys think about that speech?
It absolutely pulls together. This may sound really kind of vague, but the emotional content of the movie gives the movie so much more punch than it already did have. Changes it from a Terminator-like adventure into, wow, wait a minute, this is something really very thoughtful.
Yeah, and profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that what he chooses to mention of things that he's seen are things that really evoke a sense of wonder and joy and kind of awe at the state of the universe. And that's kind of echoed too in this really small moment where Batty is leaning out of the window and the rain is falling on him. This is before he goes up to the rooftop, and he takes a moment and just leans his head out and lets the rain fall. And there's just this moment of pure joy of experience that was just really, really delightful. And that, I think, ties in really well with his speech, just really cherishing his own existence.
I like that you bring up that point in the film, because that's also another very important transition in the film. It's where the hunter becomes the hunted, right? Before this, you can see that Deckard is pretty much blind to the injustice and inhumanity of killing the androids.
Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard. If they're a benefit, it's not my problem.
And his perception of these androids completely colors his feelings that they're not human. And when he goes and he systematically kills them, he doesn't kill Rachel. In fact, he falls in love with Rachel, right? But at the end, he's still tracking them down to kill them. And he shows up at the Bradbury building, which is a famous building in LA. It's been in many films. You wouldn't recognize it in this film because they trashed it so much. But here he shows up, he kills Pris and has this standoff with Roy. And it's intense. It's very well done. I mean, I love how Harrison Ford before this is much more, focused and like he's doing his job. And then all of a sudden he is now just trying to survive.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful. The whole Roy Batty becoming the hunter. What do you guys remember from that? How did that make you feel when you saw that sort of switch around there?
Well, I remember the first time I saw that when I was a kid. It was kind of a frightening moment. It was a realization of, holy cow, wait a minute, what do you mean? What do you mean now suddenly I'm the one in danger? And now I simply observe it for the moment that it is. The switching from hunter to hunted, turning things around quite nicely.
And I love the fact that he goes after Deckard not for self-preservation, because he is about to die and he knows it. It is totally an act of vengeance, an act of wrath, an act of justice for his compatriots, which I thought was cool. And I love his howling. That was just very atmospheric and like, ooh, chilling. Cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I think that was very intentional, and I love that they did that, because when you think about coyotes or you think about wolves, howling tends to panic the animals around that they're hunting, and it makes them, they get so panicked that they make mistakes, which makes hunting them a lot easier.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
Yeah, so I tip my hat to that they threw in the howling. I just think that was a brilliant idea. Before I forget, I remember, because my notes are like jumbled, they're all out of order here, but I had more things about eyes that you guys might remember. Roy Batty holds up a pair of eyes to make fun of J.F. Sebastian.
Yeah.
And it may not be the most politically correct, especially at this time period, moment in the film. But it's eyes. And then we have the Voight-Kampff test. What does it focus in on? To tell if you're real or not. It focuses in on your eye.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing that I had in my notes on eyes, you had brought up Chu, or what's his name? Hannibal Chu, the eye doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And or the eye geneticist, bioengineer. I don't know, how do we want to put that? But when they come in there, he tells them,
"You Nexus, huh? I design your eyes."
Sure. If only you could see what I've seen with your eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, next to the Tears and Rain speech, I think that's probably my next favorite line in this film.
It is another powerful moment. And something else that has occurred to me while we've been talking about eyes. I mean, there's the age-old folk wisdom that says the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Yes.
So we're very much exploring the idea of, do manufactured beings have souls? And then considering what we do to these sentient beings, do we have souls ourselves?
Very good point. Very good point. How about you, Tanya?
Oh, well, I just wanted to mention too, one of my second favorite line, aside from the Tears and Rain, is the "quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave."
Yeah.
Yes.
That line, I have goosebumps still. It's just such a powerful line. I actually almost made that my senior quote in the yearbook, but I ended up going with Peter Murphy lyrics instead. But I love that line. It's fantastic.
Wonderful. There's so much we could talk about with this film, and we're not going to have enough time to get into all of that. We're shortening our episodes a little bit, folks, because we're doing the vodcast first, and then there's the audio podcast, and we just don't want to overwhelm people with a 2-hour show. So we're going to try to cut this a little bit. But before we get on to the next segment here, I kind of wanted to talk about the casting and the performances. There are so many good actors in this film. Daryl Hannah sticks out to me. William Sanderson, who was wonderful as J.F. Sebastian. And then Joe Turkel, who played Dr. Eldon Terrell. Eldon Terrell, to me, I mean, that was just a wonderful performance from him. And I guess he passed away very recently. Also, the guy who played Leon, he passed away also very recently. And the original Blade Runner in the film, Holden, he also passed away. So the cast has started to age out here, because it's a 1982 film.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford's still going strong. He's about to release, and in fact, very soon in the theaters, there will be the new Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, which I'm excited to see, and I hope it's better than that Crystal Skull thing was, because that was not good, to say, at least in my opinion.
That's one that I can say I remember I saw it.
Yeah. Aliens. It was better in Stargate. I'll just say that. Anyway, anybody have any performances that stood out to them? James Hong, to me, did really great as Hannibal Chu. I love the small Chinese guy working on the eyes, and watching him act out that whole scene where he gets colder as it goes on.
Yeah.
Was what's the word I'm looking for? It was hard to watch, and that tells me it was acted really well. Tanya, do you have any of the performances stick out for you?
Well, the two that I like the most are really the two main characters of the film. I think this is one of Harrison Ford's to date. It's still one of my favorite performances of his. I even like it better than his solo, honestly. I just think there's a lot more layers. It's a little bit more depth intense. And then, of course, Rucker Hauer, because for me, his character and his performance of that character really make this movie for me.
Ben?
Yeah. Similarly, Rutger Hauer is the one that stands out for me enormously. It's funny. I never really connected these dots until this week when I rewatched it. But Roy Batty is what the Terminator wishes it could have been. It was just, I mean, don't get me wrong, Terminator is a very, very fun movie. But Roy Batty was an actual character. A fleshed out person, if you will.
Right.
He made the scary villain into, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Suddenly we can all really identify with what's going on here, with what this guy's going through.
Yeah. So Roy Batty was Rucker Hauer's favorite role in his career.
Nice.
And it's really wonderful to know that. I believe he also passed away a few years ago. And I was very sad when I read that, because, for years he was my favorite villain, right? Quote unquote villain.
Yeah.
But he also had been on other things like True Blood, and he did a couple of his own standalone films, but nothing really ever reached the level of this film. This is a hard act to follow as an actor.
Yeah.
I mean, the performance was perfect. I mean, flawless. This is a flawless performance. If I was to do a list of actors and flawless performances, this would be up in the top 3, if not the top performance. So, yeah. Anyway. The other thing before we move on to the next segment is the music. Vangelis. Vangelis also passed away just recently. And his music and soundscape in this film, I think, is another thing that really sets it apart from its contemporaries. A lot of times the music is so slow and building. It creates such an intense mood when you're watching. Everything, even from that opening segment with that slow, drawn-out electronic string section and the blowing up smokestacks, to the light bell tinkling sound when he's alone in his apartment, and then the sort of sexy saxophone when he's talking to Rachel. What do you guys recall from the soundtrack, and how did it move you, or did it move you?
Oh, the soundtrack was phenomenal. And I think it was ahead of its time, very sort of a precursor of what we see a lot in scores today, or even just within the past decade or so, this sort of random, long, drawn out, holding on noises for a bit too long to make you just slightly uncomfortable and curious. He did that very, very well. The use of sound in this film was great. And the little love song sax it's an earworm for sure. I since I watched it last, it's just been like diddling around in my brain. And I can't get it out.
When I was watching it last night, Anita, when that came on, Anita said, what's with this weird porn music? And I said, babe, it's beautiful. What are you talking about? You're killing my perception of this song, this music. Ben, how did the music affect you in this film? What did it do for you?
Oh, it felt almost like being transported into the setting.